how are you going to enforce compliance?
To set up essentially kiosks to make it convenient for folks to be able to do the process that's outlined in this legislation, so they can keep those. The information is on file with the Illinois State Police pursuant to this statute. That'll be less of an enforcement mechanism and more of a compliance mechanism.
Just don't bring your firearm to the kiosk. That's the message from Illinois State Police, as on the day that they end cash bail statewide, ISP released the rules that they have filed, emergency rules, with the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, set with a hearing next month. 2 weeks after the window opens for this gun and magazine ban registry. What all is in this emergency rule? Well, to talk more about this, somebody who's been watching this very closely, of course, we've chatted with him many times. He's a gun rights expert, and he joins us now via Zoom. Todd Vandermyde, thanks for taking time this morning. Of course, this is something we've been anticipating. The window opens October 1st with the deadline of January 1st. If people don't comply and they're found to be out of compliance, they could face a Class A misdemeanor for the first offense and then a Class 3 felony for a second and subsequent offense. What's in these emergency rules? Good morning.
Well, I think part of it's what's not in these rules, because the statute requires people to register their so-called assault weapons, and it also requires them to register their attachments, which is a whole, but they don't tell us how to do that for the attachments. For the guns, it's your FOID card number, your make, model, serial number. It's going to be done through the FOID website, to do that. But, and firearms traditionally come with make, model, and serial number. They haven't said what they're going to do for something that's pre-68 that doesn't have a serial number. They have no accounting in there for that. It's pretty typical for state police to just completely foobar rule sets because they don't know what they're doing. And I think we see a bunch of that here. They talk about this being voluntary. I don't know anybody who has been voluntarily running to the state police wanting to register their firearms. So their use of that term in here is kind of laughable.
Well, and on that, it's interesting because, Todd, I mean, you have to check on the form that they propose in the emergency rules here, which, by the way, emergency rules are in effect when they're filed. So this has to get in front of JCAR. So these are in effect October 1st. But on the form that they have in there, it says you have to check mark you're voluntarily providing this information. What does that say about your thoughts on the possible Fifth Amendment implications here?
I think they're trying to get out from underneath that they're trying to say that, well, see, they voluntarily waived, that kind of thing. Kind of like, you get read your Miranda rights and you acknowledge you're going to answer questions. But I don't think it's worth the piece of paper it's written on right now. This whole thing is just more of a regurgitation of the statute. State police is notorious for that. You ask them, how can I legally transport a firearm in the state of Illinois? They cite the statute. They don't answer your question. They just refer you back to the statute. They've done that here. The list that they published is just a regurgitation of what the statute is. It is not saying, oh, well, we find this gun or that gun. They don't talk about what's readily convertible for magazines. And you would think something like that would be in here. They don't talk about how you're supposed to register 50 BMG ammo if you want to keep it if you happen to own a 50 caliber rifle. There's a bunch of stuff in here, and they've put a confiscation order in this. So this is not just you can keep your guns. This is now, if you have your FOID card suspended for something like a DUI as a condition of bail, and you transfer your guns to a friend to hold them because you don't trust the police department to accurately protect them, you can't get your guns back if your FOID card's reinstated.
Todd, a few other things in here that are kind of fascinating. Of course, we reported on this just by reading the text of the law that passed and was enacted January 10th. And it talked about how Illinois State Police are to, every October 1st, update this list of firearms that are considered banned. Talk a bit about that, and then also we'll talk about all the exemptions that are spelled out in these rules, the class of people who are exempt, including non-residents who are traveling through the state. But talk a bit about every October 1st. Apparently now, Illinois State Police, if this law is upheld by the courts, Illinois State Police will be able to modify this list of certain firearms that are banned that need to be registered, including or excluding weapons or firearms that are used for hunting. Talk a bit about that.
Sure. So there's a couple of sections here that dovetail in, but they're supposed to update their list. Obviously, new guns come into the market all the time. And it's going to be on the state police to say, hey, by the way, this gun just came on the market and it's a prohibited firearm. That could be some new model of a 22 caliber pistol because it has a threaded barrel. It could be a new semi-automatic firearm that somebody designs that's not out there today. Somebody just told me that Smith & Wesson may be coming out with some side folder 9mm. If it wasn't around in January, obviously that's something that could be added to the list and things like that. You've got that here that's just crazy. And they had to come up with this hunting part because it's legal to hunt with all these guns in the state of Illinois. If you give me a firearm off their list, I can find you a species that it's legal to hunt with. And coyote hunting is a big thing for guys with ARs. And under the, remember that you've got the gun ban, and under the gun ban in 1.9, you then have a list of places you can't take your firearm, which is any public property. And there are some places you can publicly hunt coyotes. And so they had to make some adjustments for that, because if you look at it, there's a lot of guys who own Remington 1187s that have thumbhole stocks, or Benelli Super Black Eagles that have pistol grips that are turkey guns, and they hunt public ground or they use them for hunting. And we've always argued that a lot of these firearms are suitable for hunting, and they just have to, they had to make allowances for it. Now, basically all they did was restate the wildlife code. They didn't put any real information in there. If you go back and read the wildlife code, hey, this is all legit, no problem. Well, that shows how, one, inept, two, lazy state police are, because that's all they do. They constantly recopy the statute and put it out there like it's something new, and it doesn't answer any questions.
Todd Vandermyde with us, gun rights expert in Illinois, talking about the emergency rules that were filed yesterday by Illinois State Police concerning the gun registry. Todd, looking at those rules, it lays out, not just the firearms that might be exempt for hunting, but it also lays out the exemptions of the various classes of people, including peace officers, qualified law enforcement and retirees, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, wardens, superintendents, keepers of correctional institutions. It goes on from there. Your thoughts on the exempt classes that are in the law being spelled out in these rules?
I think they just doubled down on what Tom DeVore has been arguing about, is to, the equal protection claims that are within here. I don't think they thought this all the way through. Some of these exemptions, so if you're a National Guard guy, you're exempt while in the performance of your duties. I mean, where in their right mind do the state police think they're going to go arrest a National Guard guy in general when he's on duty? They have no jurisdiction there. But yeah, these are all political classes of people in some way, shape, or form. Retired cops. When I left the military, I left, machine guns, hand grenades, and all the fun stuff behind. I don't know why retired cops are any special category of individuals. And I would wager to say that I have more training and put more rounds down range than 99% of the cops do every year. Yet I don't fall into an exempt category. Not that I want to, but they also trick these guys up. And it's kind of interesting that they say that, if you have it outside, if you have a firearm outside your actual duty, you have to file for an affidavit and you have to have your little exemption noted on your FOID card or whatever. So, which begs the question, are they going to issue a whole new round of FOID cards? Remember when the expiration date went away with the FOID card, they started issuing new FOID cards that had a combination CCL endorsement and there was no expiration date on it. And they said if your FOID card didn't have an expiration date, you had to get called in for every ammo purchase. Well, now they're going to allege, it looks or appears from the rule, be putting some sort of endorsement to have a so-called banned firearm in your possession. Are they going to issue 2.5 million new FOID cards? Or a FOID card for everybody that files for an endorsement. And I'm not convinced they're going to get a ton of compliance on this, because what they don't talk about is how they don't talk about accessories and stuff like that. Okay, well, subpart I bans parts. They didn't talk about how they're going to deal with parts. But if I have a 3/32 roll pin that is used for an AR-15 bolt catch, and I can go to, I can't go to gun store and buy it, but I can walk down to Home Depot and I can buy the same roll pin. How are we going to deal with any of that stuff? How are we going to deal with parts? A pistol grip makes a firearm and assault weapon over here, yet I can put that same pistol grip on a pump action shotgun and it's completely legal. How do you deal with that? They haven't answered any of the real questions with this. All they've done is simply regurgitate what the legislature wrote.
Tom, we got just a few more moments here. Of course, compliance is an issue. Touch on that, but also, I guess, talk about what the next steps are here with JCAR. They meet October 17th, I believe, is the date they have laid out. That's more than 2 weeks after the October 1st start date for these rules to ultimately open up that registration window.
Well, as you pointed out, the emergency rules are in effect now that they've been filed. This is what people have to operate under for the beginning of the registration period. Registration opens, or is supposed to open, October 1. We'll see if they have the portal open. We know how poorly the carry stuff went and the dealer licensing stuff went, but JCAR is the next step. And I think if you have one of the 16 legislators is yours that's on JCAR, or 12, 16. I think that it is important to contact them and tell them how bad these rules are. We will be sitting down here shortly and going through every line of the rules and putting our comments together. Then it's going to be important for individual gun owners to start filing comments with the state police, telling them how messed up their rules are and asking them very pointed questions to try to get directed answers. And we know what they're probably going to do. They're probably not going to answer our questions. They'll respond to the comments, but they won't answer them. And at that point in time, it'll be our job to point out to the legislators just how ineffective ISP is actually being and ask them to deny this rule and do something else. But you don't have to run out and register your stuff October 1st. The registration isn't going to close until December 31st. So, and I'm hoping we see something out of the Seventh Circuit and or some other court action long before that to put a halt to this crazy system. Because again, if you have your FOID card suspended for some reason and it is later reinstated and you transfer your firearms I transfer my guns to Greg for safe holding, Greg can't give them back to me. And you're right, they didn't address Freedom Week or the TRO saying all that stuff is verboten. But yet somebody who, decides to move into Illinois next year and bought an AR-15, for Christmas this year, they get to bring their gun in and register it, and all's hunky-dory. I think that's another equal protection claim that Mr. DeVore, has a very good chance of success on. So there's a lot of crazy stuff in here. It's typical of the legislature throwing, a bunch of stuff against the wall to see what sticks, and then, not really understanding what they're doing and leaving the state police to try to sort it out. And they're kind of hung out to dry because this isn't their expertise. Let's remember that a week ago, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was arguing in front of a federal judge that the standard is 8 hours with a full machine shop for readily restored or converted to in the Vanderstock case. That's all on the record in the oral arguments. So when you talk about the magazines and readily restored or converted to, I think the state police have a big problem.
Todd Vandermyde, gun rights expert here in Illinois, talking about the rules, emergency rules Illinois State Police filed yesterday. Greatly appreciate it. We'll talk again in the near future.
Take care, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and